Andre's in Brisbane. I'm in the Cape. So it's what, 7 o'clock your time. Andre, thanks for coming back to us and continuing this very interesting chat we're having. Andre, I must just tell you, the response, I think all your charm and good looks is having its way with the world, because the last interview we did has gone down extremely well, and a terrifically positive response from several thousand people who've watched it and have expressed real interest in what you touched on. And I must say, I'm terribly surprised at how much interest remains in a war and events that took place over 40 years ago. But maybe it's because our experience still resonates today in some shape or form. What we went through in a different context is still sort of applicable today. And that's why I think people are very, very interested to hear your views on a wide range of subjects, not only the military. And that's why later on in the interview today, I'd like to touch on some contemporary issues and ask you to use what you've learned in life as a soldier and as a preacher and as a teacher, where we are, where we might be going wrong, and how we can deal with the future. This might be of some value to the younger generation. I know we now in the old folk rank, but maybe there are some youngsters out there who are still prepared to listen to us. But anyway, I won't bang on much longer. I want to get back to what I think people are interested in, which is your experiences as a soldier. And let's go back to your recruits course, your RLI recruits course. I think I was actually on the one just before you, funnily enough. You were 137, I think. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, and I was 136. But anyway, Andre, just a little bit about your recruits course, and we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Hannes. The recruits course in RLI was a real eye-opener for me. A shattering experience. I was naive, I was immature, and I was very protected as a child because, I come from a Christian background. So when I arrived at training troop, my whole world just fell apart because I've never, all my civility just went because I've never heard swearing like that. And, we had the parents and they gave them a cup of tea and a scone. And my mother was concerned that they'd look after her little son. And they left. And as soon as they left, it's like, all hell broke loose. And it was quite an experience. So, I quickly had to adjust. I mean, you have to. But the OC training troop was Captain Carr. Our course instructor was Sergeant Davies, excellent man. And from there, we just started. But we were at the bottom of the cesspit. And, we were just the scum. And we just, for 4 months, we just ran. You never walked, you know what I mean? You just had to run all over the place, double. So that was my introduction to the Army. It was pretty rude. Our PE instructor, because we had PE every day, was a Rhodesian rugby player. I think his name was Brian Robertson.
Ian Robertson.
He was mad about, he was obsessed about sit-ups and press-ups. So, we talk about a 6-pack. I'm sure I had a 12-pack because we just did hundreds of sit-ups. He's a fitness fanatic. But I knew Willem Rutte very well. So Willem was with me. So every morning we'd run through those gum trees. And we're extremely fit. And Willem Rutte, quite an old man, but he had these skinny little legs like a spider. But my goodness, this man could run. No one could beat him. So we tried to cheat, towards the end of the group, and we would take shortcuts, you see, when the instructor wasn't looking. But I must tell you, Hannes, the worst experience there was on the drill square. So we would drill for like an hour a day, but once a week we would have Sergeant Major, what was his name?
Erasmus.
No. Yes, his name was Moose. So you can imagine for yourself, a moose. But his wrists were as thick as my thighs. He was a big, strong man, and he was a Rhodesian wrestler. So you didn't tangle with this man, and he had this big black pay stick made out of metal. And he used to stand, up to 150, 100 meters away and give his instructions. And they were pretty garbled, so we could never quite work out what he was saying. And so in the call sign, as we're marching, we're all saying to each other, sort of whispering, what's he saying? Change step, mark time, left turn, right turn. We just couldn't work it out. And if you got it wrong, you'd come with his pace stick and he'd wallop you. So I had bruised shoulders because he would just wallop, and in your face, he'd just blaspheme at you. And, like the alien, all this dribbled and the spit all over me, but you couldn't look at him. You would just say, yes, sir, no, sir. But we were petrified of this man. But my goodness, he could swear, and it was quite an experience.
I remember it also.
You remember it? Yeah, you probably so. And then for PE, we had Sergeant Major Mompson.
Yes.
I think he was also some Rhodesian wrestler. But one day we were going to the rifle range, about 7 vehicles, all us recruits. And this vehicle came up behind us, and I thought he was a bit impatient. I was in the last, and I showed him a sign. So he passed the whole convoy, and he stopped the whole convoy. And he said, who was this man that showed me the sign? My goodness me, I got such a fright when I realized who it was. I thought it was a civilian that I was doing it to, but it was Sergeant Major Monson. So he took note of me, and he from that day didn't like me. So once a week we would have, CQB, close quarter combat. And he had to have someone to demonstrate all his moves, sort of disarm a person and kill a person, with your bare hands. And he nearly killed me, you know what I mean? He used to get me in a locked jaw and throw me to the ground like a packed sack of potatoes. And I dreaded that. So when he had finished with me, I was aching all day, but this carried on. He just wouldn't get me because I was rude to him. But it was a tough recruit course, but it was worthwhile. And we passed out, qualified soldiers.
I think you're right. I think looking back, we were actually quite lucky. We had that that experience because we did come out of it pretty well prepared for the hardship that came our way. But Andre, just fast forward now to action days with the RLI. Any memorable I don't know how many contacts you had. I know you had plenty, but particular engagements that stand out in your memory.
Okay, Hannes, I just want to say something about RLI. Perhaps I haven't done justice to them, but for me, that was one of the best fighting forces in the world. They were just a mean killing machine. And what struck me about RLI was their combat readiness, and they were always spontaneous to respond, to react to any call out. And the men never flinched. They were always ready to deploy. And, whenever we deployed, I don't think there are many units or armies in the world like this. We just advanced. We never knew about retreating. We would just advance in the face of the enemy. And death, as it were, was part of being a soldier. Being brave meant that you might die. Now, I mentioned that, Hannes, because today I look at armies and they want to fight, but they don't want to die. It's strange, you know what I mean? Like I looked at the Americans' advance on Baghdad in Iraq, all the cruise missiles. There's nothing dangerous about that because, they'd fired the missiles hundreds of kilometers in advance. But with us, it wasn't like that. You know what I mean? You had to really be professional. You had to be brave, and you had to be prepared to sacrifice your life. And so in RLI, each call sign would be fully equipped, always ready. You didn't have to baby feed them. They just knew what they had to do. The MAG gunner held like a special status in the call sign because he was a powerful man, like John Vincel. You see, I think he was 14 troop, I was 13. These were tough men, and we relied on the authority of that machine, that MAG, doing its work. So these were very special men in each call sign. But in 13 Troop, Hannes, I've already said to you, it was a very good troop, but I had fantastic men there. I can't remember all the names, but I tell you, Hannes, they were as good as, they were NCOs and troopies, but they were as good as officers. And just some names come to mind that I'll never forget. There was Corporal Coon, there's Lance Corporal Charlie Warren, there's Sergeant, here's my Sergeant, Paul Abbott, there's Corporal Norris, Corporal Galloway, Jimmy Gibson, Corporal Hodson, Lurch Miller, Bruce Kidd. These were just some of the names I can remember after 42 odd years. But these were such brave men, such brilliant soldiers that, they have to be respected. And what I went through just for a short period, they would go through year after year. The CEO of RLI when I was there was Colonel Rich, was followed on by Colonel Bate. And the three commanders, CEO was Major Buttonshaw when I was there, followed by Major Snellgar, who I like very much. And after Major Snellgar came Don Price. So I see you've interviewed Don.
Yes.
Don was a very experienced and respected OC. I know that with the feedback I got from the men. So great on him. But I think the biggest setback I experienced in RLI, before I just tell you about a few ops, was I was sitting in the pub, eating my Capenta fish and having my beer. And next minute, next to me on my right sits Colonel Rhodesian. And I offer him some Capenta fish. He's a bit of a low mood, but anyway, we'll have our liqueurs, you see. And then next minute, about 15 minutes later, on my left comes General Hickman, and I'm in the middle. A subaltern, brand new. And these two start having it out about Colonel Rhodesian accusing General Hickman about his phone being tapped in, and General Hickman saying he had nothing to do with it. So I thought I better pull out. So I pulled back, sat down, not at the bar, and I heard them having it out. But that was very discouraging to me because a house divided cannot stand. And I thought, if these senior men fight like that, what's going to happen to the followers underneath them? But Hannes, most of our ops were conducted from Grand Reef, Buffalo Range, and Mount Darwin. So they were the areas that I operated in. But when we arrived at Buffalo Range, this is one particular op. I just want to show you what was normal. I don't even think we experienced this in SAS. But we were called out. The Salute Scouts OP had reported 12 CTs. So I was the man on the ground and we deployed. And let me just tell you, this is typical scene. We flew, as we're flying over the scene, they started shooting at the aircraft. I was standing in the door, just like that, you see. And the floorboard by my feet were just popping up with bullets. And I remember I was so worried that, if these bullets would hit me in my manly parts, well, that's my sex life gone. But I was really worried about that. But I was standing at the door, and the pilot was sort of maneuvering, trying to avoid, all the fire. And then as we're about to jump, my water bottle popped out. So with my right hand, I latched onto the water bottle and I put the lever over this finger, and then I jumped. It was red light, green light on, and out I went. And in the midst of the fire, the gunfire, and I had a streamer, and I couldn't pull my reserve because my right hand had the water bottle. So I couldn't dislodge it from my finger. Anyway, that streamer opened up just above the trees, and I was safe. Landed in an open patch, could see where the enemy were in a very, very thick clump of bush. But between the enemy and ourselves, the call sign was a barbed wire mesh, you see, a fence. And so in the midst of that skirming, we had to get over that fence, which we did. The MAG gunners covered us. We went through. And as we're going, I could see the main guy behind a big tree shooting at us. And he was pinning us down. So we had a lynx, this push-pull job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the pilot was Terry Kleinarts, whom I knew. So I said, Terry, look, there's a pilot, and you fire the fireball and you give direction from the pilot's point of view. At 50, go left, right. And he dropped a Frantan under that terrorist's bottom. And the terrorist shot up in the air a couple of feet, and he fell in front of us. And the Frantan, that white phosphorus, just spread really across the field. So I thought, let me go and look at this guy to see if he's dead. Maybe he's a prisoner, let's see. And I went to go and turn him over. So the men were on either side of me now. The thick bush still under fire. I turned him over, and as I turned him over, he was lying on a grenade. And so I shouted grenade, and we all managed to run about 5 steps and just lie down. And the grenade went off, and none of us were hurt. And then we carried on. There were 12 tours. We shot all of them except for one. 4 of them hid in trees, so they couldn't run away. That was a silly thing for them to do, because we spotted them up in the thick trees, and we took them out. And they just fell down from the trees. But in front of us was like thick bush, and there's one tour that couldn't be accounted for, and he was in that bush. So I said to the call sign, I'll go through the middle, big granite boulders. You follow on the right, but just let's keep our arc of fire. And as I was going through around this big boulder, I heard click, and I looked back, and there was this one terrorist. He tried to shoot me in the back, but he had a misfire. And Lurch Miller on my left, with the MAG gunner, said, "Watch out, sir," and he took him out. But just in that day, just in that one op, I had 5 narrow escapes. That was incredible. And I just experienced that a few times. And some of these men, like I think of Charlie Warren, and then, they experienced that continuously year after year. Mm-hmm. So that was one op. The other op was we were positioned at, where was Mbalahuta? And once again, they spotted tours in the Sengwe. And 7 of them, 5 or 7 of them. So I was the ground commander. We deployed. That was my real first fire force deployment. Major Buttonshaw put me in charge. So I told the pilots, 4 choppers, where I want the men, 2 junior pilots, and off we headed to the Sengwe. And they dropped them off. I asked, just confirmed, are the call signs in the right place? They said yes. They dropped me off in a cattle crawl. That was the only place where there was clearance. I jumped in from about 5 feet, the call sign, into thick cow dung. So I was just covered in flies. I could just wipe the flies off me. And as I landed, I saw about 5 of the enemy in front of me. So they started shooting at us, but I couldn't see properly because of the flies. Anyway, we advanced, and they hadn't dropped the call signs off in the proper place where I wanted it. It was like 200 or 300 meters too short. But while I was initiating contact with the terrorists, and they were breaking to my right, the one guy shot me there. That's the mark over there. You see, that's where he shot me in the arm. And then next minute, I was walking into Corporal Coombs' call sign, and they started shooting at me. So I couldn't manage the firefight from 2 angles. It was just too much for me, because this guy shot me, and they're shooting at me from the front. So I thought I'd apply a bit of bushcraft. I went down to cover, but it didn't help, because Coombs' call sign really shot me in the arm, they shot me in the chest, and they shot me in the leg. And they also ignited my white phosphorus grenade, which I couldn't put out. Now, you and I, when I was at school, we used to do physics and chemistry. And in chemistry, they teach you that white phosphorus must be submerged in water, because once it gets to the air, it burns. So I thought, aha, that's it. So I sat up to get my water bottle to dose the white phosphorus, because it was burning me right to my bones in the sand. You can see the mark. It burnt right through to the bone. And I tried to dose it, and then I got shot in the leg through a ricochet. But anyway, I was badly wounded. They flew me to Mbalahuta, that's in South Africa. The choppers picked me up. From Mbalahuta, the Dakota flew me back to Mbalahuta, the mobile surgical unit, and the doctor there, whom I knew, they stabilized me. Then they flew me to Chirezi. Then they flew me to Andrew Fleming. And there I had like the top orthopedic surgeon in the country fix me up. You know what I mean? So 6 weeks later, I remember I had my first contact again at Grand Reef in Umtali. So that was incredible. But all that scenario was basically inexperience. It was my fault. But you know, Hannes, that's the nature of the beast. That's how you learn. And I didn't die. But yeah, that's what happened.
Well, that
But
was
they gave me an overdose of morphine, Hannes. You know, when you get shot, they're meant to put up their, 1 ampule of morphine. Well, they didn't do that on the ground. So they gave me a morphine. And then in the Dakota, they gave me another one. So I was really drugged and very happy. You know what I mean? But my heart.
it was probably Mike Standish White that worked on you.
Yes, I think that was him. Yes.
Andre, he did fantastic work. I mean, I don't know how many wounded soldiers that guy put back on their feet.
Yes, I think that was him. He was the top orthopedic. He set all my bones and all that. And like I said, yeah. So, I mean, I'm just trying to show you, Hannes, the RLI were experiencing that. No other unit was experiencing that. That's not the same as doing reconnaissance or OPs or internals, you know what I mean, or camp attacks, where I have 20 men on either side of me advancing. And RLI just went through that. And these were like boy soldiers. And my goodness me, Hannes, they were an awful killing machine. No one could face them. You know what I mean? They would just attack all the time. And so yeah.
Andre, let's go forward then and back to the SAS now. Back as an officer, you had to do I think you had to do an officer's selection. You might want to just mention that when you went back to the SAS.
Yes, that we had to do the officer selection. I'd already done a selection. Then after the selection, which was it was okay. I was pretty fit. I used to run 10 kilometers a day, every day of my life. Then you had to do an all-in where these senior NCOs, Nick Juster, Ben Buerta, these were like giant men. They would catch you and interrogate you because you were given information that they had to extract from you. So that was quite something as well. But if you passed that, and the sergeants approved of you, and Daryl was one of them, then you're okay. So yes, I went through all that, no shortcut, and I managed to get through.
Right, let's fast forward then up to from the RLI back to the SAS, but as an officer. But now you have to do another live firing officer selection, which I think you did with Rich Stannard up in Urungwe.
Yes, that Daryl was the guy that assessed us. Now, Hannes, I wasn't of the same caliber as Daryl and Rich Stannard. Rich Stannard is a short guy. He had a chest like barrel. He was a real tough, cocky guy. He's small, but he was just, dynamite comes in small packages. But I worked a bit with Rich. He was a corporal and I was just a troopie. And he's quite a naughty guy, because all our early ops, we did up there by a Mary Mountain Mukumbura. And instead of us finding the tours, which there weren't any, because it was just tsetse flies and Mapai flies, he would give false lock stats and he would sunbathe. And for me, this I've been unseen, but he was a real jovial character. But I wasn't used to this. But that's just how Rich, and he was as brave as anything. But he, like I said, is quite a naughty character. But yes, we did lots and lots of patrolling. That's when all the early ops, there was detente going on, and I worked with Richard. I worked with Billy Grant. Billy Grant had been a corporal about a dozen times and demoted. He could drink an ale of beer, a yard of beer in a minute. See, so that was his great accomplishment. and it's called the Bunk Club. If you passed that, it was of a high status. You know, you got a T-shirt, and he headed that. So he earned great respect, which of course I could never do, you see, because I didn't drink much. But that, you know, and Corporal Duffy was another man that I worked with. But these were the NCOs I worked with. But we did a lot. I went to on Machipande with Daryl. We went into Mozambique. My first operations, meeting this, Daryl was a young sergeant then, and he had legs like oak trees. And we used to go into Mozambique, and he'd lay all the explosives on the trains. But I just followed him and admired him. We did Chetty Island. I was there with Lieutenant Rob Warwicker and Captain Mick Graham. We did quite a bit of that. Hondi Valley, I can remember all the buffalo beans, you know, you're getting the itch, you know, from all the beans. And 1975 was a hard time where we mainly patrolled in the Marymount area. Lots of mine laying in the Gaza province in 76, 77. That's where I learned a lot, you know, about the Frelimo, because we had contact after contact, and that was very frightening because they would always deploy after us in much larger call signs. So that was quite an experience. Yeah. Those are the early days, you know, right in the beginning when I had an officer.
Andre, I know that that the attack on the camp at Makushi was quite a harrowing experience for you. You came up against a lot of female combatants, and some of them gave a very good account of themselves.
Yep, you're right. Hannes Makushi, also known as Op Gatling, that happened in October 78. So I was on that. I deployed in helicopter. The other guys deployed in Dakota. There were 1,000 CTs there. Intelligence didn't tell us there were women there. And so Makushi was about 125 kilometers northeast of Lusaka. And when we arrived there, we saw for the first time lots and lots of women. So this is the first time I've ever experienced fighting women, which is, for me, just not the right thing to do. You see, I'm not used to fighting women. But let me just share with you, Hannes. So Bob McKenzie was my OC. He is the street line commander. Quite a strange character, Bob. You know, as we were advancing, he stood behind me because I was in the middle of the assault line. But he was behind. He had this helmet on, and he had his M16, you know, his rifle, carbine rifle. And he was pointing out to us all where the enemy are, but he didn't take any cover. And I thought, what a brave man. You know, I was groveling in the ground so that I didn't get shot. But he just stood there and opened fire, just ignoring everyone shooting him, because the woman was shooting at him. And he was just directing the fire, telling me, saying, Andre, left, right, in it. So that's what he did. And I've never seen such bravery from Bob McKenzie. But I had Stan Standish with us on the jump. He was the guy, old man, he jumped in the Second World War at Arnhem. You say he was with us. And I had a call sign, a real difficult call sign. I had Bob Pike. He was the British Paris, and I had Vern Conchi from New Zealand. And these guys were fearless soldiers. They were real warriors. You know, we came to a thick bush, and there were about 9 women hiding in this bush. And they just charged into this bush with their 9mm, and they just shot them all point blank, just like that. And they were really fearless. But out of the 1,000, record shows, I think we killed. So 170 SAS men jumped in. There were other men who did the administration in the background, but 170 of us at Makushi killed nearly 1,000 people. I think it was between 600 to 800 people, mainly women. And the women fired back, Hannes. But Hannes, they didn't stand a chance against SAS. I mean, being shot at for us was pretty normal. You know what I mean? That was normal. And so the women, they were annihilated. And so if you had to ask me about the role of women in the military, yes, they have a role, okay, but I don't think it should be combat. And certainly not to face SS. You see, because I said none of those women survived. So yes, they have a role, they have a place. We respect, we love them, and they're part of the equation. But I don't think that those women there stood a chance against us. They were just wiped out. I saw the fear on their faces. They just couldn't match us. You know what I mean? And for me, that was the place for women to be, Hannes.
No, terrible. I'm sure it was. It didn't give you any real sense of fulfillment, or
no. I think Nkoma made a big mistake there. You know, to employ the woman to do that. Yeah. But that's just how it went. Like I said,
no, you were wounded. You were wounded there as well, Andre. During that.
No, I wasn't. I tell you there, what happened there was Oppie Collett was killed. I knew Oppie from Thornhill. He was my skivvy. I was a senior, Oppie Collett. You see, I was sixth form and he was junior. Oppie Collett.
That's right. Yes, he was killed.
And also Bruce Lang was shot by a woman through the jaw as we were assaulting. Yeah, he got a bullet right through the jaw. So that's what happened. So we lost one man, but I think we killed 800 of them, and that there were 170 of us.
Amazing statistics. Andre, let's go back to Reconnaissance, which I know you enjoyed doing, and some of the more memorable reconnaissance missions you carried out. You might want to just talk about the background, what you did, how it all unfolded.
Okay, Hannes, there's a big op. There were many big ones, but this was a big one, Hannes, honestly, by all standards. On the 30th of September, 79, I was told that there's a new Chimoya circle. We called it Monte Cassino, because in this big camp was a big hill, they said, and it housed, intelligence told us, 2,000 Zanla tours. So I was briefed by Winston Hart and by Danny Hartman. Those were the guys, the SB guys. And we didn't really know exactly where this camp was. I'll tell you why, because, and I put it here in my notes, it was called the New Chimoya Circle because previously a man by the name of Richard Stannard, good old Richard, called in jet strikes upon the camp, and the Frelimo were fed up with them and told them to move, and they moved across the Tet Chimoya Road. And so we had to go and find this new Chimoya Circle where the Freddies were. So thanks to Richard, I had to go and look for this new camp, and he gave me pretty good time. So we didn't know the exact location, but they allocated to me a guy, Olympic shooter, by the name of David Westerhouse.
Yes.
And the idea was, once again, Tongariro was there, and Nongo. They regularly visit the camp. And my mission was to find the new Chimoya camp complex, to capture some hierarchy, second aim, and thirdly, to try and capture Josiah Tongagara. And Dave Wester, who was a marksman of exceptional, world standard, he was to shoot out the tires.
He went to the Olympics.
Yeah, and then we'd capture him. Now it sounds easy, doesn't it? But anyway, Hannes, let me tell you what happened there. Rob Johnson was the OC. There were 2,000 Zanla fighters there, fully armed, 2,000. And it is also called Monte Cassino. But I deployed, walked in 2 days. Rob Johnson was the charge, and he set up a radio relay station back in Rhodesia, and there was Bruce Lang, Henny Pretorius, Barry Deacon, Rob Heppel, and they would relay back to Rob Johnson, who was sitting at Grand Reef. You see, and if I needed aircraft support, that's where my help would come from. But Hannes, on the second night, as we marched in, about midnight, Hannes, so we're a bit tired, eh? Walking, and I used to walk, Hannes. We're crossing trenches. So, you know me, I thought, gee, these look like prospecting trenches. I can just imagine copper, nickel, zinc, lead, galena. You know, I would love to come back and visit these trenches. Anyway, up in front, carried on. There was this big hill. It just carried on and on, up we went. And I posited ourselves right on top of this hill, right dead center on top of this big hill. And I felt quite pleased about that, you see. And I said, guys, we'll sleep here for the night. But next morning, Hannes, down below, there are 20 men, Zandler, prodding the road. And the Frelimo guy could hear them talking, saying, you know, these guys are saying that they heard choppers and they need to just clear the road in case that we had laid landmines. So that seemed a bit strange to me. So I said to Baz Jolliffe, Dave Berry, look, you guys stay up here, right on top of the hill. I felt very safe on this hill, Monte Cassino. But I'm going to take one M&R guy and I'm going to go further east and I'm going to see if I can find the camp. But we were in the camp, Hannes. So just the two of us set off. And as I set off, I'd find spur of about 50 to 80 people. The grass was tall. And I walked about 4 Ks under, right up to the Cobora-Bassa power lines, because we weren't allowed to touch that, because that supplied electricity to South Africa. I understood that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I heard civilians making a noise. We approached them, and I said to the M&R guy, just the two of us, I said, can you go forward and ask them where the camp is? Because tell them we're a bit lost. So he went forward. He was trustworthy. They said, oh, no, the camp's there. So he came back to me. He said, the camp is where we've just come from. So I walked all the way back again. And they didn't recognize me because remember, I had black vegetable dye and I had a big afro like that, you know, big afro. I just walked back and I said to the men, no, we're meant to be in the middle of the camp. And it wasn't long after that, Hannes, a call sign of 10 men were coming up the hill. So Sergeant Baz Jolliffe says to me, 10 men are coming towards us, a clearance patrol. So I said, Baz, look, just let them come up right close and, you know, just 5 meters and just take them out. I want to know what weapons they were carrying and how they were carrying them, how alert they were. Anyway, Baz Jolliffe did that. And we killed 3 there. And some men were wounded and they tumbled down the hill and the rest ran for their lives. But that was, that set the camp alight. And next minute, mortar fire was just raining down upon us. So we ran down this hill. It was a long slope, downward slope, you see. And the mortar fire was just following us like that, you see. And got to the bottom. And I saw the main gate to the camp. A boom, everything. Just remember, just like back there at the other camp I did, where we killed the Russian officers. Because this time we killed the East German officers. And I said, look, we're going to set up an ambush right here. If we're going to catch these high-ranking officials, the generals, we're going to get them here. And there's pandemonium, because remember, we looked like the Frelimo. We had the same uniform. We were totally black. And lots of activity. And I set up the ambush right there. We didn't wait long, and these 2 white Land Cruisers came along. And the guy at the sentry lifted the boom gate, and on either side, like President Trump, he's got his security guards walking, but they were carrying their weapons high, and they were trotting along. And I said, these are the guys, we've got to get them. Anyway, David van Breda, the RPG-7 rocket launcher guy in front, took him out. It hit the engine block and the vehicle set alight. And on the back, a big 44-gallon drums of fuel. And so once again, they were all killed. And so over there, Hannes, we killed about 15 people, including the bodyguards, and we killed the 5 senior East German officers as well. We couldn't recover them. It happened too quickly. Anyway, having done that, I said, guys, we've got to get out of here. Hannes, I don't know, we were surrounded, honestly, in the middle of 2,000 armed men. I don't know if you can imagine what that feels like. For me, it was very disconcerting. I thought, and anyway, I said, no, we must get out of here. I've never seen so many soldiers armed running around us, and so off we set, and I anti-tracked about, I think it's about 2 kilometers. And I said, right, clear for an LZ, let the choppers come pick us up. And about 15 minutes, Baz Jolliffe says to me, sir, the track is running on our spur. And that was amazing. And there were. So they placed 2 Goranov machine guns, medium machine gun on either side. And the firefight started again. So there, Hannes, we killed 6. We dropped them straight, you see. So that pinned them down to the ground. But that was quite a big firefight, because the trees around me were going white. The bark was being shredded off. So I realized, look, we've got to get out of here. So I told the guys, let's run again. Let's run. And we really just ran for our lives. And we managed to get away from them. And the choppers did arrive. And thankfully, Rob Johnson ordered the choppers to pick us up, because the choppers wouldn't, because the firing was so heavy, and they took us out. But that was a very successful op, Hannes, because I was right in the middle of the camp when I did all that. And so in their own backyard, Hannes, we killed the 3, and we wounded many. We killed the 14 or the 15 and the 6, and we managed to extract ourselves.
You're lucky. Well, you're not lucky, but Jeepers, you're lucky to be alive.
It was.
Andre,
It was very.
and I know it doesn't end there. You were back in the thick of it not long after that at Mapai.
Yes.
And that was back into the trenches and some very, very fierce fighting. Maybe just tell us a little bit about what you remember of that attack.
Yes, we went in with the Pumas, Hannes. The one Puma got shot down. Very demoralizing, Hannes. That was the one, there in front of me. This black plume of smoke. And then we landed. Now we had to assault. And as we're in extended line drawing towards the camp, I was the first to see the Frelimo and the Sandwood that hide in the trees, you see, like that. And they crawled, slither down like snakes, and they'd run back to the trench line. But I couldn't stop this advance line, because that was run by Graham, Darrell, and it was like a kilometer long. It was just kept going. Anyway, we passed through the Sandalwood, and as we got through, Hannes, there was a no man's land. They cleared the land. It was just sand. It was, the Russian front had this light loamy soil, and they just let us have it. And it really was, Hannes. The ground around me was boiling like molten lava, just from the rounds being fired. I saw an ant bear mound, or no, a white ant mound, sort of like that. And I thought, well, I've got to take cover behind this. It was the only one there, and I managed to get behind that out of the whole sweep line. And then from there, I thought, now I've just got to get into the trenches. And so I made a dash for it. And I think it was Bill Chani that was with me. We managed to get in. And then we had a fight there, because I had a few percussion grenades. But as we cornered the trenches, they would shoot at you, you see. So you had to clear every corner. And if you popped your head up, because on either side were pillboxes, then they try and shoot you in the head. So we cleared the first line of trenches. But there were many trenches in depth. You see, they were just kept on retreating. And, well, we ran out of ammunition, and it just couldn't work. But it was really heavy fire there. And the old soldiers, the NCOs, the sergeants will tell you, it was really, really something. But yes, we were later asked just to withdraw, and they bombed the area. But it was very hard, that in trenches, Hannes, to fight, to zigzag through, through the trenches. You had to clear every corner. Someone had to take the initiative and go around the corner. And every corner they were firing at you like that, yes. And you'd get shot in the head, obviously, because, your body was below the trench line, yeah.
Andre, while you were out doing your stuff, life wasn't easy at home. And they came for your father. on the farm. Just a little bit about your mom and dad and the shock of an attempt on your father's life.
Yeah. Hannes, you see, we grew up with a Dutch reformed kind of people, because my ancestors are Dutch, Andre's French, the French Huguenots. So that's where it's a very religious background. And so that was part of our culture and tradition. So in our family, Hannes, you never heard swearing or fighting or anything bad. My dad was so kind and gracious to all the people. He was just. He cared for black people, white people, poor people, my mum, everything like that. That's just how I grew up. And, you know, if you swore, if you said a bad word, my mum would put sunlight soap in your mouth. You know, punishment. So when I heard Moose swearing like that, I thought, boy, Moose, you're in big problems. I'm going to tell my mother. And my mother's going to sort you out, you see. But, and he was blaspheming my mother as well. You know, that was just how they spoke. And I'm just joking, Hannes. But we had a big farm towards Gokwe, the best farm in the area, very fertile. And the last black rhinoceros was shot there. There were hyenas, kudu, eland, no elephant, jackals, all that. And so my dad was quite a good farmer. All the paddocks were fenced off with diamond mesh to keep out all the jackals, because they would catch the sheep at night, the lambs especially. But it was a bit disappointing because Zipra arrived there from Gokwe, and they said to the laborers, look, you phone the boss, tell him to come, the lister pump had broken. Now, my dad was a big man. I'm 6'6". He was a strong man, hard working. That was his ethic, his hard work. And he said, but I just fixed the lister pump, because there was a mono pump down under the ground there, and they pulled it up and fixed it because the water would be pumped up from the bottom. And anyway, he went. That was after 3 o'clock shift. He got there 4 o'clock. But it was all a ploy by the tours to get him there. And they waited until sort of dusk, sunset, and they ambushed him on the road going home, going out of the farm. And they shot the laborer next to him through his kidneys. So he died. His name was Sixpence. He got shot straight away. My dad got badly shot through the head and through the his arm got shot right off. There's a little black dog that managed to detract the terrorists, because for a while they tried to shoot Chippy because he tried to attack them, but he was very fast, and it gave my dad a chance to crawl over Sixpence, the other side, you know, and passenger side, and run away. But that was all set up. But I think the locals were intimidated with fear, because if they didn't do what the tours said, you know, that they would be killed themselves. Yeah, that's what happened there. But Hannes, but even in spite of that, honestly, you know, Hannes, you speak about Rhodesia. You know, Hannes, we weren't racist. We had a colonial background, Hannes. You see, my tradition comes from Europe, and we appreciated that the black culture and tradition was different to ours, and I didn't try and impose them our way, and neither did they do it to us. But we got on so well. And we were always just, always fair. My dad went out of his way to make sure that the laborer deserved his hire. They got paid. They got meat. They got butter. They got milk. They got milk. My dad was so good. And we didn't have a notion of hatred towards the black. Now, I think this must be an English thing, a British thing, because all of a sudden we were made to be like racist. But honestly, Hannes, I wasn't a racist. And even in the war, Hannes, so when I was engaging in the enemy, I never really wanted to kill anyone, but I had to, because they were shooting at me. So, you know, you can't stand there and say, look, here I am, just kill me. You have to, you know, you have to fight and defend yourself. So that was, you know, just how it went. But we were not racist. We didn't hate the black man. In fact, Hannes, where I come from, Kwekwe area, the Redcliffe area, our black people, the laborers and that, they were better off than many white people. My dad built them houses, and they got 3-course meals, and they had an ironing board, and they had showers, and they were so appreciative of all that. And I mean, if you look at the nation as a system, Hannes, people were being educated.
Mhm.
The police force, they weren't oppressive. I don't even think our police used weapons when they, there were no weapons. So, they had lots of liberty and freedom. And yes, the black man had been colonized, but I think in a matter of the progress, we were busy reforming and changing. It takes time to bring about change, and we had to negotiate, and there had to be bilateral talks. Maybe that process should have happened quicker. You see what I mean? But that was the nature of the beast. That's just how it went. But it wasn't done. There wasn't anything hateful or evil or unjust or unlawful. And I think, Hannes, from what I hear, I've never been back to Zimbabwe, but the present population actually wish Ian Smith was back in power, because they're worse off now than they were then. So,
Andre, it's funny what you say. Well, it's not funny. It's sad. But in this modern era of fake news, I tell people, we were victims of fake news back in those days. The world never got to actually hear the full story about Rhodesia, and it was thanks to organizations like the BBC, the newspapers like The Guardian, and a whole legion of left-wing journalists who told the world a very different story to what was actually happening on the ground. And as a result, the world came to a very easy, convenient conclusion that this was a racial war and that these were a bunch of spoilt whites protecting their place in the sun. And that was never the truth. But that is the story that was peddled to the world, and the world believed it. And as a result, we got no understanding. And unfortunately, the world won, and we lost, and that has impacted very negatively on millions of black lives. Forget about the few whites like you and I who've been displaced and who also suffered the consequences. It's millions of black people who've paid the price for the collapse of what was once a very functional country.
Very much so, Hannes. We were excelling in agriculture, mining, commerce was growing. We were a very profitable country. What's the word? But we were really doing very well. Prosperous country. So this whole dilemma, and that's all the propaganda. And like I said to you, I think it had a lot to do with England's guilt. How they felt they had to now give back the country to the blacks, and that wasn't an issue really. I think that something could have been worked out there, but just the way they went about that.
There's no doubt if we'd been left to our own to sort out our problems amongst ourselves, we had a very good understanding across the racial line, and I think we would have found the solutions. But the world insisted on interfering and imposed solutions and people on us with catastrophic results. But Andre, I just want to fast forward again to something very contemporary, and I don't know whether you really want to talk about it or not, but I know that the Australian Special Forces, in particular, I think the Australian SAS have been getting some bad press lately, and I know you know something about that. I just wonder if you've got anything you'd like to say about what's been coming out of late about the Australians in Afghanistan.
Hannes, I have had correspondence with the general and the special forces, and they've corresponded with me as well. I've shown videos of the incidents, and I looked at that. I think we've gone very radical in Australia, where now they've disbanded the unit and they want to take away their medals. And I've never heard of that in my life. But we've become very feminized and PC in Australia, trying to please the rest of the world. And we forget that you deploy SAS to kill. That's our function, you see. And so uh, that sort of is pushed to the side. But here in Australia, um, looking at those videos, I also think there's an element of SAS that wasn't doing the unit or the San Beret much justice. So I wrote to the Army headquarters saying, look, uh, I think some of these men, I watched their deployment, their formation. I saw what they did to some of the civilians. I don't believe, Hannes, it's right just to shoot uh, innocent civilians or old people, things like that. If they're armed or if they put up their hands, then they surrender. And they did shoot them. But then I was told that some of these guys at night they change, you see, and then they become terrorists again. You see what I mean? And then during the day, like Mao Zedong, his philosophy was like a fish in the water, like that. And then they mix with the civilian life, and then at night they engage in their terrorist activities again. So that's true. But the thing is, what they did there, what I saw, just wasn't right. And listening to some of the men acting, I thought they were a bit immature, and they were trying to act macho, you see, just kill. And they were showing off a bit. I felt at SAS level, we didn't work like that, Hannes. So for me, those men needed to just be retrained and just directed. But Australia has taken a very sort of radical stance there, and it's caused a lot of trouble here because a lot of SAS soldiers, they've got very good soldiers, Hannes, good equipment. They now quite demotivated because they feel betrayed by this whole thing. And of course, there's a lot of women politicians that make decisions and call the shots. And the world has changed now. We're so PC, and people are telling SAS how they must behave on the battlefield and what they must do. And I see now, just the latest today, they say the general that sacked him, he should be sacked as well for being a coward, because he should have stood up for his men. But it's very politicized, the whole thing, Hannes. But I'm glad that they involved me and they responded to me, because I told them, I was a lieutenant in SAS, and I just think that as soldiers, we shouldn't have behaved like that, you see, because I never would shoot just a civilian for the sake of shooting a civilian. If anyone put up his hands like that and surrendered, I wouldn't shoot him, Hannes. No. It doesn't matter, whether he's in a tour or what his operations were, but they did, and that all went public. And so Australia is very sensitive because China is, giving us a rough time there, and we want to try and please the world, and we're just trying to be very PC and do the right thing, but we're becoming weak because
it's actually it must be a tough situation being a soldier in the modern era from a Western army, because you have to play by all the rules and the enemy plays by no rules, and that makes it very, very tough for a soldier in the modern world. And I suppose there's so many cameras around, it's so easy to record events. And so you never know when you're going to get, when you might be exposed, which just makes it all even more.
Yes.
More
so the whole nature of soldiering has changed, Hannes.
Well, listen, Andre, it's been another very, very interesting half hour or whatever with you. And I can't thank you enough for telling us your story and reminding us of some very, very memorable events. And I'd just like to think that not only will your stories enlighten the world, but this is a bit of a record of events that otherwise wouldn't be out there. So I think it's it's a nice little contribution to history, and I can't thank you enough for your time and your input.
Thank you very much, Hannes. And it's a great privilege, a great honor. And we want to represent our country, and we want to record history accurately. Yes. Thanks, Hannes.
Thanks, Andre.
Bye-bye, Hannes. Cheers.